Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing today? Thank you so much for the follow. Mm. How's your morning going? No, you know. Good morning. Thank you, Robin Biband, for getting second. Thank you, Irene, for getting first. And thank you, Tanga, for getting third. No, you're almost definitely struggling with counting again. Hmm. Hmm. Did you all sleep okay? Or are you going off to sleep? No, I did not get much sleep. But that is on me. I had thought about, maybe not doing a little stream, but the difference would have been 2 hours, and at this point, 2 hours is not going to be helping me that much. So I have a little coffee here in front of me, as well as water to my right. And if I remember where I put it, I have an energy powder somewhere. Though it's been a very non-tasty. Thank you for the stretch. I hope no one's been up for too long. Nobody's been keeping themselves up just to wait for the stream, right? You wouldn't do that. No. All of you lovely people are making sure you get enough sleep. Morning, all bats. Good morning, Keely. I wish I knew what I'd done with my energy powder. It's gone. Giving myself wicks, I felt like it, and then I started. I did not sleep well at all. But how did you sleep, all bad? Did you sleep all right? Mm. 1 second while I drink a little coffee. That's where I least expect it. That's fair. Well, I least expect it to be in front of me. Sorry, look there. Were you in my nightmares? Aren't you supposed to be live right now? Or did you literally just end? No. Discord says you're still alive. Goofy. Motherfucker. Let me drink a little coffee first to make sure you're taking your meds if you haven't yet. Well, we ready? Do you all want to hear about D&D? I can tell you all about all of it. And where do we start? Do we come back to the very beginning? Or... So, for those of you who don't know, I like to DM. I love telling stories, and oh, Tiger, you're totally fine. Don't you worry. I don't mind if people fall asleep during my streams, no matter what time it is. I take it as flattery. So, thank you for the follow. Session 1 or Session 0. When I do D&D, I like to meet with each player individually a lot of times and discuss with them the backstories of their characters. And that way, they can have things to hide from the other players and things can be discovered about each other. And interesting enough, this campaign was one that I was sort of almost taking over. They had planned out some characters and had been interviewing some DMs. And then I met one of the players and was like, hey, I like DMing. Can I interview? And they chose me out of the people they were DMing with, or having potential DMs. And it was funny because, like, two of the players were like, oh, I didn't know you wanted a DM. I guess I can DM. I'm just like, no, that's okay. That's okay. And so, they brought me on. I met with each player. One player wanted to be a mix of two races. There's the book that allows you to combine two of the character races. I can't remember what the one was, but the second one is a Warforged. And the idea is that they are a doll made specifically to contain an eldritch being, so that when the village they're in figures it out properly, they can house the eldritch being in it. And these sessions are all done online. The next one was, well, since they had already rolled stats and stuff, one of the characters has gotten very, very lucky with their rolls. And so they decided that they were going to play a prodigy character. It is a Circle of Stars druid, where it's a star-based race, where like they have partially illuminated skin and little stars will show up on their skin. And they decided to be a prodigy of that village. Everything had been the tongue action. Oh, I do know Neil Newbin. Thank you, Mr. Jake. Well, character was a prodigy. Everything went really, really easy for most of the time. And one day, I'm trialing my new dose of ADHD meds. The biggest contributing factor will be whether I sleep or not. Hasn't been helping my attention span much. I know we need to talk about ADD sometime. I'll talk about it on stream. I've had a lot of experience with it. So, prodigy character. And one day, while gazing at the stars, they're taken away by a being from the stars, and it tells them a warning that it needs them to travel and find a specific place. And so they go on a quest to try to find the star that this being mentioned. Another player is a changeling, but one that doesn't realize they're a changeling. Hmm. I only found I have therapy or photo mode. Ika, good luck. And good morning, Palmo. Right, where were we? So, what is a changeling that doesn't realize they're a changeling? And we're going off the classic, myths of changelings where they are deposited among others and sometimes they replace children. And the village they're in discovered that they were a changeling. And they thought it was witchcraft related. And so they were put to the stake and set ablaze. And while they were burning, they saw the face of one of the villagers and took its face, wearing it as it burned. And they were saved by someone. They don't remember much, but the last thing that they remember is seeing the face of that human. And now they have that face permanently until they one day figure out who they are. And they're trying to find a place where they can belong. Enjoy your kissing, chat. This changeling has run into the Star Druid and follows him along as things seem to go well in his wake. Then we have Sylvia. And so for the names, the doll, the Eldritch doll, their name is Prissa. The Circle of Stars Druid, their name is Siloon. We have the Changeling, who they named Nora Wench, because it's written close to not a witch. And thank you for the kiss, whatever. Thank you for the follow, Skylar. And then we have the next one. Thank you, Anya. Next, we have Sylvia. I don't remember what race they picked specifically, but I do remember they're short. And when they talk about the character, they talk about how it looks almost like a pig. The pressed in nose and very short, and they decided to use Miss Piggy as their little icon. Well, and they chose a Circle of Mud Druid, which is a non-official character race, but I thought it was fine. I read through the stats and none of it was too overpowering. And so, good morning, Goro. No, not me. I like Donali. And this character is kind of part of the mob. Not directly, like their family's related to the mob. And so, their brother, who's the primary, main line, has all this ability and power. But Sylvia just kind of wants to find her own space, and so is questing around and looking for things. And lastly, we have a player that very recently joined, Asphodel, who is a barbarian. Human barbarian, classic. No, that's wrong. They're actually like a half-elf barbarian. I've forgotten that because they mentioned they have these long, pointy ears, and one of them is partially missing because they were a gladiator, fighting in the ring, finally won their freedom, and are now traveling. Mm-hmm. For session one, I had each of the players going to a kingdom, each for their own reason. The Eldritch God, not the Eldritch God, the doll NPC, Prissa, is kept alive by magic. And since she is slowly going to start potentially falling apart, she's looking for the strongest magics to keep her together, as well as, just find new places and have new experiences before her life comes to an end. And so she's heading to the kingdom of my story. A kingdom that came too quickly to existence. That seems to be a pinnacle of technology and magic. Saloon has followed the stars to this kingdom, and the closer he gets to the kingdom, the more things feel wrong. Nova or Nora Wench had followed Saloon there. The game starts with these three players, one at a time, entering a tavern. Saloon and Nora, traveling together, of course, decide the first thing they want to do is start talking to the bartender, and at some point they realize that they don't have a lot of money and need a room. And so decide to try to convince the barkeep, good morning, John, that they are traveling performers. They're able to do so, and with a promise of a good show, then they say, yeah, maybe I'll give you a discount on rooms and food if you perform very well. And around this time, the doll, Pressa, shows up. One second, John. There we go. The doll, Pressa, shows up, riding on the back of her donkey or mule named Morris. She enters, and since she's a bard, she hears them arguing about, prices, and, yeah, I muted it, don't worry. Seeing that they're trying to argue as a performer, and she's like, well, I'm a performer, let me help. And the group gets together and does a little performance. The druid trying to create a little lighting show, and it goes very, very well. People are distracted, and they love the show and are buying more drinks, and so they are given a room at the inn. They see some of the conversations and discussions happen, eventually reach the point where they all want to go to sleep. They only had the one room that they were given and go to share it. Funnily enough, they only had two beds, and so for a good amount of time they're trying to establish who's going to sleep where, who's going to share beds, and if one person's going to, stand in the corner or whatever. And I believe how it ends up going is Nora gets one bed, Saloon being the gentleman he is and only needing trance sits in the corner. Press is given the other bed. But what some of you may know is that the Warforged, which this race is based on, don't need to sleep. They just kind of power down. And so Prissa just sits on the edge of the bed, staring out as she goes into standby mode for sleeping, looking out, which I just think is hilarious. Imagine being like, oh yeah, I'll let you sleep. And then instead of sleeping, somebody just sits on the side of the bed the entire night staring at a wall, waiting for it to be over. Oh, good luck on you. Good morning, Pinky. Now my player started at level 3. I like having players start low, especially when there's a bunch of newer players. Those who might not have more grasp of their character. And so, of course, as so many good D&D games begin, the first threat is goblins. We get a shout out for the lovely Pinky. Thank you for the hydrate, Tar. Can we get a shout out for Tar as well afterwards? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, my players are sleeping. One is doing their nightly routine, going to the bathroom to wash their face, get themselves cleaned up. They've removed all their armor. And as they start to return from the bathroom, actually, you know what? We'll get there eventually, it's fine. As they get back from the bathroom, standing in the hallway, they see goblins trying to break into the room. And had somehow snuck into the inn from a side entrance. There's a moment where they try to figure out, are the goblins supposed to be here? Is this okay? And so sleepily, not able to figure out the intent of the goblins, they try to walk past the goblins to open the door until the goblins realize, wait a second. What? Pure Jean, that sounds so tired. I don't know what that means, Robin. It sounded like you tried to give me a night tale. Pure Jean, not tale title. Pure Jean, the tired. So, the goblins react. The players inside the room wake up. They struggle a bit to open the door they had locked. Get it open, and the druid fires off an attack that just melts the face of the first goblin. The second panics and runs deeper into the inn, and they hear in the distance the scream of the barkeep they'd met earlier being grabbed. They all spring into action, half-dressed as best they can, fighting back the goblins and killing those that they are able to. And as they make it out, the lead goblin yells at the others, saying to go back to the glade and to run. And some are able to escape. Others are not. And when the battle's done, my players have one goblin who's panicked, a few dead goblin bodies, and they're told that the barmaid had been taken and they're asked to go save them. Players being players, of course, try to interrogate the goblin. They tie him up bondage styles and strap him above the toilet in the bathroom. Harass him. One uses mind reading, and they try to find out what's going on. And they're able to find out that the goblins have been tasked by some cultists to kidnap locals. Good morning, King of Toasters. To kidnap. It's Jean's kink. It's not my kink. But yeah, the goblins had been tasked by the cultists to capture locals to use in whatever rituals. The goblins don't know why. Players discuss what they're going to do, and at this time, Brissa introduced the players to their mule, Morris. And we find out that Brissa might not have the best understanding of normal laws, because her story for how she got Morris is, it was awful. Somebody had abandoned this poor, defenseless mule and wasn't even feeding them. They'd abandoned them outside of a bar, and they'd made it so he couldn't even move by tying him to it. So Brissa did the only thing they could do to a poor, abandoned mule, which was untie the mule and take it with them, as well as all the bags of feed that happened to be attached to the mule, and the baggage, and the bags, and the adventurous gear that just happened to be attached to the mule. I mean, like, that poor defenseless mule. And the other players looked at each other being like, we really need to watch out for her in case she accidentally commits crime. Pinky, you're such a good girl. Such a good girl. And it wasn't even a thing of like, she realizes she's breaking the law. She genuinely thought that somebody had abandoned their mule by tying it to the outside of the bar. What class is your ideal or favorite? Don't have one. I think all of them are great. Whatever class fills in the needs of the party the best. I love doing a character though with a lot of functionality, but not too much. Characters should always have flaws, because if you're good at everything, what's the point? So the players follow this goblin that they find out's name is Grimjaw. And the goblin takes them to a glade where there are more goblins waiting. And they hear the sounds of violence. Now, something I hadn't mentioned earlier, when they had been in the inn doing their performance at one point, a wealthier man who seemed a bit out of place had come in to argue with someone, and we get the idea that it's his daughter. And when they run off afterwards, the realization, as they're told by the bartender, is that that was the mayor, and the lady was the daughter. An adopted daughter. And as the players approach the goblins in the glade, they see the mayor laid out, tied up, being beaten by one of the goblins. The players come up, using their kidnapped goblin as an entryway to conversation, and they find out that the mayor had known about the cultists, that he had agreed to allow the cultists to act unabided as long as they didn't bother him and that they paid him. But while he'd been out chasing down his daughter, both he and his daughter had been taken. I use a hybrid mix. Thank you for the follow, Vixen Rose. I use whatever fits. My grasp on the D&D rules are, if it makes the story better, let's go for it. Oh, lovely, lovely Callist. You are very, very kind and wonderful. You have been a lovely addition to my community, and I'm very happy to have you here now, and whenever you're here, because you bring such good vibes with you wherever you can go. You're doing so very, very wonderful, and I know you're only destined for success. Thank you so much for the redeem. have no idea what you're talking about, Anya. That's insane. So, back to the story. And so, hi, Foodie. Because the players, or because the cultists had only wanted women this time around, they'd asked for other things before. The goblins kept the mayor and were basically just beating on him for fun. And, well, Prissa, having ties to eldritch things and hating cults, the players, for seeing that the mayor was just doing evil things, decided that they didn't want to help the mayor. And instead, just ganked the mayor. But they did ally with the goblins. No, good morning, Vixen. I'm glad. Hopefully I can be helpful for you. Players did ally with the goblins because the goblins are like, we're only kidnapping people because the cultists are making us. We'd normally just, do small crime and robbery and accidentally steal mules, which apparently my players related to. And so the goblins and the mayor went off to find the cultists. I'm sorry, honey. I hope your computer works better soon. And they stumbled upon some old temple ruins. They saw somebody guarding the door, and they made a plan. The plan? To act like one of them was a prisoner, to get inside, so they could let the others in. And they turned to the goblin, because the goblin was bringing people, and say, okay, do you think you can treat me like a prisoner? And they're like, yeah, sure, totally. And so they tie up Prissa and put a ball gag in her mouth, because the goblins, of course, had ball gags. And there was this whole intense moment where the player apparently was genuinely embarrassed as they were tied up by the goblin. Apparently they really liked Greasetooth for some reason. And they were led off to the cultists, led in, and were brought to a space where the barmaid that they were trying to save was being kept. Now, while this was happening, the two other players decided, well, we're going to try to find our own way in because it's taking a bit. Oh, I'd forgotten to mention. The first goblin that they'd kidnapped name was Grimjaw. And the goblins really don't have the best senses of camaraderie. So my players said to Greasetooth, I know this is one of your men, but we need to keep him tied up for a bargaining chip or just because. And Greasetooth goes, yeah, that's fine. I don't really recognize him anyways. Are you sure he's one of mine? Y'all can keep him. And so, through most of this, Grimjaw is kept tied up to the side of the mule, really annoyed and wishing that they could be let down. Pretty much. I will say, the goblin is still tied up to this day. They do untie him every once in a while to allow him to stretch his limbs. But recently they've moved him from being tied up on the back of Morris to being put into a feed bag. So he has a little bit of more room and made him like a baby carrying thing that they wear on their backs, and they just wear the goblin like a backpack. Nikio, get some sleep then. Thank you for the stretch. So, the two other players, as the cultists go in and take away our first character, they sneak in and try to make their way deeper into the location. Good morning, Leo. Oh, Gibbets, he's definitely come to Stockholm Syndrome at this point. The two players in the front are trying to overhear what the cultists are talking about and learn a little bit, while Prissa learns about the barmaid who's kidnapped. They're all able to move forward, and at one point, one of the players decides to disguise themselves as a cultist. How you prepare for Donut November? I have no idea, Leo. But, okay, where were we? So, one of the cultists decides to, or one of the players decides to disguise as a cultist, and it works out pretty well for the start. They're able to talk, and the Prissa is able to escape her jail cell and starting to walk back, trying to meet up with the other players, until it comes to a point where Prissa's trying to sneak up and ambush one of the cultists, but she sees two cultists. One, the player that she doesn't recognize because they're disguised, and the other, the enemy cultist. Get shouted out, nerd. And the cultists and the player cultist are arguing. One is trying to make it back outside so that they can be on guard, and the player keeps trying to say, hey, stop, I want to be bros, let's talk, let's be friends. And eventually they decide to do a love confession because it's the best thing they can think of to make the cultists not move. I'm the DM. And the player, Nora, decides to start trying to hung the cultist to hold him there. And the cultist, being dumb, doesn't realize what's happening, and instead thinks he's just being kind of felt up by his coworker. There's discussions of we need an HR department to stop things like this happening, before Prissa comes up behind them, is able to finally stab them after they've been felt up by our fellow player. And it is at this point the first session ended, the second session began, and we brought on the next player. And this player, Sylvia, the one I told you about earlier, who was a circle of much ruined, had been partying the night before, had also been taken by goblins. Good morning, Mingo. And was planning on being used as a sacrifice by the cultists. She met the mayor's daughter, who at this point still assumes her father is fine, and tries and fails to escape out of their prison cell until they transform themselves into a large animal and is able to break out. Thank you. So, cultists start freaking out. Players hear commotion. They go run to see what's happening. A battle ensues and leave the follow. Players come out victorious. And they talk to the mayor's daughter, and the mayor's daughter is all grateful for being saved and says, if you take me back home, I'll give you a reward and all that. And they do some research and look around and find out that the cultists were being tricked by an imp who had claimed to have great demonic powers, and that they could get all their wishes true if they just sacrificed enough people, and it turns out it all had been fake. Now, I do want to mention that in this place, I had made a. Good morning, raindrop. I had made a puzzle, a very simple puzzle. The classic, 3 circles, or have the right symbols pressed in the right order puzzle. And the players had walked through the room, and they'd done detect magic, and they'd found out that there was a locking mechanism through a magic combination of button presses that would disengage the lock. And one of my players is German. And for some of you who don't know, I speak some German. And so we thought it'd be interesting to make it the language of what the cult spoke was German, since the other players couldn't understand it. And so on the ground, next to the puzzle, was a simple little phrase that was supposed to describe how to solve the puzzle. Very simple. Hey, here's these 3 symbols referenced in this little poem. Press the symbols, open the door, enter a little magic area with some extra lore stuff and a new equipment, as well as a hook for one of the players. Prissa, the one who is German, picked up the note, read its German, realized this has a tie to the cultists, and because she didn't want the other players to know that she has a tie to Eldritch forces, she immediately rips up the note and goes, "Oh, it was nothing. Anyways, moving on." And then the players ignored the puzzle completely. And I just sit there going, really? Really? I gave you instructions, but she was so quick to be like, it's in German, I must get rid of this, that I don't think she heard the puzzle at all, the poem. Thank you for the bits. And so, the players go back, taking the barmaid and the mayor's daughter, and at this point we find out that the goblins had actually beat the mayor to death. For fun, mostly. The players just pretended that they did not know about that, and told the mayor's daughter, "Oh, I don't know what happened to your dad, but I guess you're the mayor now." Which isn't how mayors work, by the way, chat. They have to be elected, but the mayor's daughter seemed happy enough to try to get her own power out of this. Oh, for my D&D thing, people were looking for a DM. And they asked people to apply, and I applied for it, because I just wanted a DM. Now, well, we have a cast of 4. Sylvia, the Prissa, Norwench, and Saloon. And Mayor's dead. They decide to take the mayor's daughter back. They take the barmaid back, get the reward, and they're told that they'll have a room there whenever. And the mayor's daughter takes them through the town, a big map that I've made, which maybe I'll show it to you all sometime. It's a big map. I use Dungeon Alchemist to draw out 3D maps. It's great. And they go back to the mayor's manor and find out that it is all messy and messed up, and that the mayor had actually been taking loans from everybody, including the cultists, and that there is really nothing that the mayor's daughter can give them except maybe the house. And the players are like, "No, we don't want the house." I'm like, "You can have a giant base that you can customize and build up, and there can be a whole series of stuff happening to make your own, house." "No? Okay, what do you want? The horses?" "Okay, the horses." Oh, Anya, you're such a good little cherub. Good cherub. Mm. And thank you for the bits. Yes, because at that time, some of the members from the church show up and they get upset at the mayor's daughter, saying that they're owed money, and they take the mayor's daughter as prisoner. But while that's happening, the players go to collect the horse that the mayor's daughter had, and they see three horses. Well, Prissa, said horse. Prissa is also the one who took a mule that was tied up in front of a bar because she thought nobody that it belonged to nobody. Because why would you leave a mule alone like that? And so the priest and the knight that had ridden up had also brought a horse. So instead of getting the one horse that they had been promised, Prissa was like, "Oh, I guess there's more horses here." And so now they have three horses and a mule. Mm-hmm. Is that so, Casey? And now here is where the more in-depth bits of the plot, because all of that was done as a more of a first session warm-up, to see if we vibe together and to see if the party likes my potential campaign, and they all seemed interested enough, so I took some time off, planned out the next phase of the campaign, and I should show you all the database I made, the factions and the characters, and made custom cast sheets for or character sheets for each of the different people, and every single NPC in the town is named, and we have a whole religion that I defined with its non-traditional offshoot as well as its cult offshoot, and yeah, a whole 7-day plan of how the next 7 days are going to go in the town as things get worse and worse and worse. As the players return to the town, kind of interested in about like some of the cold stuff and what's going on, they hear the sounds of combat, of clattering metal, and a scream let out through the dark as it starts to pour rain and mud slushes around their feet. Something I'd forgotten to mention earlier. The Star Druid at one point had tried to use the stars to navigate. But as they looked up at the sky, they felt a sharp pain through their hand, as if the stars were wrong. As if everything with the sky was wrong. There we go. So, they approach into the town, they hear the clattering of stuff, a storm is raging late into the night, and as they rush forward, they see our fifth party member, Asphodel the Barbarian. Morning, Amdus. And he's fighting off two hooded figures, as there are two normally dressed men laying in the mud behind him. The party's unsure what happened. They're not sure if the barbarian is just fighting people for the fun of it or what's going on, but they are able to deduce from, one group being in the mud and dressed different, and the other group fighting, that perhaps he's trying to defend them. Players rush into action, help fight off the cloaked men, and as the cloaked men fall into the mud, they say something, bite down hard, and their bodies liquefy into the mud, turning into vapor as their flesh and everything else disintegrates into nothing, leaving behind only a putrid smell, something that feels more wrong than anything of this world. They're able to stabilize one of the two men, but the other had easily died. Think of the hydrate. And they talked to Asphodel, being like, hey, what's going on? Do you know these people? And as they're stabilizing, the one of the two fallen guards approach. And very quickly they realize that the guards are less concerned about the fight and more upset that they have to be, we'll talk about a bit of it, more concerned that they have to be out in the storm. And one of the things I noticed about the guards is that there was an emblem once emblazoned on their robes, their uniforms that had been removed and covered with a new, not logo, but emblem. Now, we have the homebrewed race, I can't remember, that's a mix between a Warforged and something else. There's a doll, that's a bard, Prissa. We have an aberrant mind sorcerer, Nora Wench, who's a changeling. We have Asphodel, a half-elf barbarian. And we have Saloon. It's like a star elf or something. I think it was a homebrewed thing. And they are a Circle of Stars druid. And the last one, I remember they look like a pig, but I can't remember what race they are because they have Miss Piggy as their emblem. They're their little icon. And all I can think of every time I look at it is, oh yeah, obviously, it's just Miss Piggy. They're not a D&D race, they're just Miss Piggy. And they're a Circle of Mud druid. Thank you for the Irish race, Cinnamon. I hope you're doing well. Now, where were we? Right. I'm running a 5e session right now. I haven't really done any other TTRPGs. But, I would definitely be interested in doing it one day. So, where were we? The guards come up, immediately start accusing them of hurting these guys. They recognize the men, and there's a moment where Nora Wench is all, these guys are our friends. And the guards look back at the bodies and go, oh, hey there, Bill. You doing okay? And they're like, that's our friends. What do you mean they're your friends? I don't recognize you. And so they try to explain to the guards what happened. And the guards not really wanting to listen. And one of the guards immediately starts pickpocketing the one of the downed bodies. Which seems like a thing that regularly happens here, that they're more concerned about making back money than they are about the death itself. And of course, the barbarian being more justice-focused, or, good, gets upset at this, forces the man to put back what he took. Sounds interesting. I might check that out, Cat. What was I saying? Alright. They get an argument with the guards, and one of the guards recognizes Sylvia. Because as I'd mentioned before, she'd been partying the night before. And due to some situation or another, had pretty much gotten on the wrong side of the guards by causing too much of a disturbance. A drunken disturbance throughout the town. So the guards wanted to take her as well as take the barbarian back for questioning, since he was the one who was fighting the most. And the players did agree to go with the guard. Because while they could fight him, they worried more about, if there was other guards around and what would happen. And as they walked back through the town, more guards joined, and all having the same uniform, kept in a general state of disrepair, each one with a emblem that had been removed and replaced with a new one. And they arrive at the jail and notice immediately how much the jail smells like a tap room, like a tavern. Why are we saying haunts? Oh, I've forgotten the haunts actually. The horses and the mule were taken to a barn to be kept there overnight. And the players go to the guardhouse, or the jail cells. Thank you for the kiss. So, the players notice how that sounds cool. Let's check that out. Gibbets. The players realize how the jail smells like a tavern and is kept in a state of disrepair, as if guards are only there because it's a job for them, and honestly, they don't really care about regulation or anything. And they're brought in with the accusations that they must have been the ones causing this issue and killing that person, and they talk to the guard captain, who at first is getting upset. After they're able to talk him down, he's like, fine, look, stay in the jail cells for now. I will go look at the body, because of course y'all didn't bring back the body with you and you left it out in the rain where evidence is getting washed away. And I will go talk to the other witness. Did you bring the witness with you? You all let the witness go. Why'd you let the witness go? He could have said that everything was fine. Fine, I'll go hunt down the witness. And the guard captain goes out to go look at the body, while the players are put into jail cells. There they run into a madman, a man who's just raving and yelling about how the stars are wrong, how everything with the stars are wrong, and that the sky is full of eyes and it looks on them all. And if you remember earlier, Saloon, thank you for the follow, Tabato, is a Circle of Stars druid who had been sent off on a journey following a specific star, and he had noticed that the stars were wrong. And so he tries to talk to the madman, trying to figure out what's going on. They're able to find out that he's an astrologer. He had been on the outskirts of town, like right on the edge, and he'd been living in a tower, tracking the stars. And something had gone wrong. Something that made him want to burn down his whole tower, so that the stars couldn't look down at him. But he still feels it now. Though he cannot see the stars, he knows the stars see him. The player had a star map and tried to show it to the madman, asking him where it had gone wrong, what had gone wrong. But he'd refused, saying it wasn't right, and instead drew his own star map, using his blood, on the walls, except instead of stars, they were each eyes, piercing through the void. The guards, being the lovely, kind sort, not enjoying the mad ravings of this man, now come out. Good morning, Demoness Chip. Thank you so much for the follow. Lovely to see you. Always lovely to see you. How are you doing? Steal all the trash and build our trash kingdom. Why are you building a trash kingdom? Hello, XOXO. Nor. I'll get your name right eventually. And And it's around that time, Twitch acting up. Oh, it's fine. It's around that time that one of the guards comes back and lets out the players and says, look, you're free to go. When you says checked out, if you want to leave, you can leave. But the guard captain wants your help. He's asking for you to come help us, help him. Whether you want to or not, that's up to you, but we would appreciate it. So the players have a choice. They decide that right now they are more wanting to know about what had even happened with that encounter, like why there was this fight going on. And while they had been there, initially they had looked around and noticed that there was an inn nearby. And it looked like these men had just left an inn. And nobody had helped. Not a single person had helped these men while they were attacked. In fact, as they had left, they had looked back at the tavern and seen, Goose, you're such a good little bean, such a good bean. Good bean, Goose. As they had left, they had seen that the tavern patrons had just simply gone back inside. So the players thought to check the tavern first. They avoid where the guard captain's gonna be. Sneak up to the tavern, and they're like, how do I get in this? Well, perfect. You know, the door in the alleyway next to the tavern is probably the front entrance. And so they try to get in. The door doesn't move at first. Not too easily. The barbarian tries it. Strength checks it. Breaks the lock on the door. And goes in to a very, very upset barkeep who goes, what the hell are you doing? And they're like, I wanted in. And goes, have you tried the front door? He points out towards where the door is. He goes, oh, well, I'm in now. He just pushes past him as all the players kind of shuffle in through the side door, dragging mud and water into the inn. Obviously, not starting off the best relationship with this tavern owner, but they're able to smooth it over a bit as they talk to him. If just the prices might be a little bit higher from then on. Oh, thank you for the kiss, Ori. Mwah. And they start, interrogating all the patrons. Hey, what happened? Who are those guys? Ren. All right, Ren. Right, interrogation. They order drinks, they sit by the fire, and the bard finds a fellow bard who isn't playing because that bard had a busted instrument that Prissa tried and succeeded at fixing. They could have music, kind of lightening everybody's spirits. They start to, interrogate people. The barbarian finds a man running a little dice game. Good morning, Wild Kitten and Pixel. How are you doing? Sorry. And he's able to find out that the two men that had been attacked were part of a local crime group, let's just put it that way. And Prissa, finding an old lady who loved to blab, started talking and schmoozing her, and got her excited, and we start learning about the town a little bit more. Oh, you're gonna have to get up, Wild Kitten. Thank you for the hydrate. Shiny. in the stretch. Hello, Angelic Neko. Thank you so much for the follow. And Pinky, I go by Hive. Chat, what pronouns do you use? So, where were we? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Echo Infernal. I hope everything goes well. Talking to the old lady. And as she talks to the old lady starts giving her like a rundown of the town. You see, this town had once been an old mining town. The lord who owned this land had, you know, built some houses, brought in some miners. She, her. Good to know, good to know. Any, she, her, she, they. She, her, lost cause. Oh, gibbets. Darling. So I'd been a mining town, and the Lord had not cared much for the people who lived in the area. He worked them hard, pushing them to get more and more out from the mines, wanting to pay taxes and claiming, oh, well, the taxes went up again, and oh, the taxes went up again, and the miners struggled with this and realized there was more of them than there was he. And so the miners formed a union, and they decided to fight back against the Lord. You know, as non-violently as possible, going, well, we're not going to mine, and then you're going to have nothing to pay in taxes unless you start giving us some rights and start treating us better. It didn't go well at first, but over time, the union won out, and the Lord agreed to allow them to elect their own mayor to kind of run the town as long as his taxes were getting paid. It's implied that something happened to the Lord to make him agree to this, but we, the players, don't know yet. And as the union got stronger, no, Kitten, you're so very, very kind and sweet. You're a lovely, lovely streamer, and I know you're going to do amazing with things. I am so proud of you for what you do. And I look forward to seeing how you grow. You are just so very, very wonderful. And God is lovely. Thank you so much for the redeem. And thank you for being such a lovely streamer. Mwah. Morning, Master. How are you doing? That's amazing, Bomo. That's amazing. Right. So as the union grew stronger and others came into the union from outside, the union's purpose started to shift. Instead of being focused on, keeping the miners happy and healthy, the union decided that every new business that came in needed to register for the union. That if you wanted to trade with what the union had, you needed to join it. And of course, you needed to be kept safe, right? So you had to join the union. Everyone had to be part of the union and had to pay their union dues until a sort of mob formed in the town, a sort of mafia. Or if you're not part of this union, you are treated awfully and run out of town. It seems that the mayor... I'm proud of you too, Goose. Seems the mayor had been, put in place by this mob, this mafia, but had been taking deals from cultists. Now, in this town are three primary groups. There is the church, the Eternal Dawn, there is the Union, and then there's the Lord. We find out at this point that the Church has been butting heads with the other two factions. The Union's butting heads with the other factions, and that with the loss of the mayor, suddenly the town is kind of left in a power vacuum. And each section is broken up by who they associate with. The players don't realize this yet, but the area that they were in was more towards the Lord's faction, while the south west is the Union, and the northwest is the part of the Church. And the players learn about Cassian Rook, the leader of the Union, and they try to figure out how could they meet Cassian Rook, and are told, you don't find Cassian, Cassian finds you, and you don't want Cassian to find you, because he only comes to find you if you've been causing problems. It is this point that I decided to allow the players to roll a D100. They did. And there was a few things that could happen. And they hear the clatter of dishes from the table next to them as a mercenary who was doing bad at one of the gambling games starts to groan and moan, and you hear pained noises coming from him as the players turn towards him. They see his skin move. The player who's closest to me is like, are you okay? Do you need help? Let's take care of you. And the man starts to seize as he falls out of his chair to the ground, knocking over his food. The players start doing little medicine checks, trying to heal the guy, trying to get better, trying to fix him, as one of the players casts a detect magic, and they see a strange magic they've never recognized before emanating from the food that the mercenary had been eating, and slowly building at the mercenary's core as they hear the sickening crack of bones, and the flesh starts to undulate and swell and grow, and Prissa jumps into action, yelling at one of the players to push over a barrel. They take the empty barrel, lift the body of the mercenary, throw it into it, kick the barrel out into the rain, right as they hear a large cracking noise. Thank you for the follow, Stitches Chaos. And shards of the barrel come flying through the window. And they hear the sound, not quite man, roar out in the waters of the rain and mud. Players spring into action. One kicks open the door to see what had happened, and they see standing there a massive form. Some of the features of the mercenary are still there, but the body moves and shifts in its fleshy shape, stretched to unusual proportions that never seem to hold on too long, while bits of them bubble and pop and fall to the ground, sizzling and turning to steam. It turns to the barbarian who was first to act, and prepares to move. Now, should I continue the story here? What do you think, chat? We could always just call it here. Wait for next time. And do something else. You're my strange father. You just got from work. Was it interesting? Allie, why do you sound sarcastic? The Thwappable team. You have no clue what Thwappable is. Your job is trying to make me feel better. You game. You know what? Fine. Fuck it. Why not? Let's do this. I could do this. I don't see why not. Okay, we'll continue the story after I do whatever this praise is. Hi, Hoshi. I didn't even realize you were here. What's up, Hoshi? Oh, no. It is. Thank you for the follow, Jeffrey2797. It is set on a timer so that I don't get stuck doing too much praise. Back in the day when I'd first put the praise redeem, thank you, Country Thick. Back in the day when I'd originally done, the praise redeems, people would redeem it one after the other. And it would get to the point where I had to do it for like half an hour to an hour, which is non-stop praise. Eventually you run out of things to praise somebody for. Yeah. It fried my brain. Alright, back to the story. Out in the rain and the mud stands the large undulating form, 4 times larger than it had been when it had been a mercenary, its body not holding the shape that it should. The barbarian springs to action and, being a man who's been in so much combat, recognizes the look of a beast getting ready to charge. Mwah. Thank you, Anya, for the redeem. And the stretch. And hydrate. The barbarian rushes into action. The druid. We have 2 druids, by the way. One of the druids buffing him, and the bard also buffing him, and the bard rushes out to fight this thing, the barbarian. But it's difficult to fight. Its body's not holding its shape, and so when you go to cut into it, sometimes the body just moves and doesn't feel a thing. Other times it's so easy to remove a limb, and the fight progresses, getting more intense as the thing starts springing new limbs, and parts of it just pop and seem to hurt itself. In the distance, they see the guard captain approaching, as well as a priest and a knight, swathed in golden light as they put off an aura of, divine energies. The barbarian is buffed by this, and the party is able to fight back this massive creature. And as it is killed and brought low, just like the cultists from before, its form, unstable, slowly turns to mush, steam, and the whole body's gone once again. Thank you for the bits, Anya. Thank you so much for both of them. Both of them bits. And luckily, this kind of proves to the guard captain that there had been cultists that had attacked, and they had turned to vapor. And their party's brought into a discussion where the priest is saying the man who was killed earlier that night belongs to the church, that the church should get to take them because they have religious rites and practices that must be abided by. Well, the guard captain says, no, he was one of our men, but he wasn't a guard. And for the guard captain to say more, he'd have to admit that the guard's all a part of the union as well. and that those men were part of the union as well. And the priest says, "No, I took that man the other day, guided him into the light, and gave him a religious symbol. Just search his body and you'll find it." The priest initially stays inside 1 second, the tavern, while the players are inspecting the body and with the guard captain. And as the guard captain searches through the body, by Allie, you be good. He does in fact find a religious symbol. Hi, Leap Boy Kisser, how you doing? But the barbarian quickly notices that since the guard captain seems so distraught by the fact that there's this religious symbol and says, "I knew this man, he most certainly was never religious," the barbarian realizes that the religious symbol is in the same pocket that the guard from earlier had been searching to try to loot the body. And that, well, of course, the guard captain, the guard, not captain, just the guard had been searching the body, pulled out money and other stuff from the body. He'd never seen that religious symbol. And why would that religious symbol be there? It looked like it was made out of fine materials. Shouldn't the guard have wanted to take that? Eternal, what a rare treat you win. You get a gifted sub. Congratulations. Enjoy your emotes and your ad-free experience. And so, the players decided the best thing to do, not trusting the church, was to hide the religious symbol as quickly as they could, stuffing it away into their pockets. As the priest walks up, one of the players holds up their lantern and goes, "Oh, hey, there you guys are. We're wondering when you're coming over." Just enough to blind the priest. So they're able to get away with hiding the religious symbol. And since there's no proof that he belonged to the religion, the priest has to kind of accept that and just go on his way. Of course, with a bit of, "Hey, come to the church. I'll help you see the light. You can join the flock." John. You have been absolutely incredible. I've been very happy to see you here in this community and see you coming by so often, because you bring such good energy with you and make this chat a more lovely place to be in and to experience. You're doing amazing. So very, very wonderful. And John, I'm proud of you just for being here. You are going to do great things. You will. And you're doing just the right things and following the right path. Thank you for being as incredible as you are. And thank you for being a member of the community. Mwah. Where were we? Right. The priest goes off, says, "Hey, you can go." And, oh, you can come join the church. We're always open. A little upset that they have to give up the body, but not trying too hard. And when the players go back to, check out the tavern, and they look around, they realize that the barkeep is gone, making the connection that there'd been something in the mercenaries' food. They go back and look into where the kitchen and the food had been prepped, and they find a little vial of something. The vial's magic definitely... No, I'm telling about a D&D campaign I'm running currently. Elite Boy Kisser. My players found the vial and made the connection that perhaps the barkeep had something to do with the transforming mercenary. And they talked to one of the guards saying, hey, we need to find this guy. Here's the file. Can you track him down? We want to see like why he ran away, why he never came back. What's going on with that? Because at one point during the encounter with the mercenary and the transformation, they'd yelled out for somebody to get help, and then the barkeep had left. Not finding much more evidence of anything, most of the patrons having left due to the disturbance, they decided to find a place to stay for the night. They had asked around and found out there was 3 taverns in the area, one in each of the faction section. They were in the Lord section. There was one for the church and one for the Union. And the players, still wanting to find more about Cassian Rook, the leader of the Union, decided to go to the Thieves, well, not the Union's tavern. They entered, and one of them tried to use a fake name, trying to lie about who they were. And the innkeeper just looked at them and was like, really? And when they tried again to use a fake name, he again shrugged and waited until one of them finally said the right name. And he goes, oh yeah, that must mean that you're Siloon, you're Nora, you're Pressa. And he's able to point each one of them out without having to ever met them. He said, your rooms here tonight are on the house, as well as any food that you need. They ask, why? And he says, oh, well, the guard captain sent somebody by earlier to make sure that we paid for you. And the woman who was the innkeeper, or they assumed was the innkeeper, was covered with a mask on her face and a hood over her head, and she said, the rooms are upstairs. The thing about this inn is it doesn't really feel like an inn. There were no chairs, very little space for people to stand. It does feel like a bit like a brewery, but even the way to get up to the rooms is through a ladder instead of a staircase, so it feels more like things were shoved into this space to make it into a tavern, and the players noticed. One of the players goes, why are there no chairs? And the innkeeper just says, oh, we've had too many situations with, rowdy customers, so we figured, give them one less thing to throw around. He goes, if there's no chairs, are there beds? And she smiles and just says, of course there's beds. Don't worry about it. You can just go upstairs. Carmia. Hello, Carmia. Thank you, Jean. Gotta go. Oh, I didn't realize you were here. Well, good morning, Carmia, and good luck with whatever you're working on today. I apologize I didn't say hello to you earlier. I've been so busy storytelling. Now where are we? Right. You got this, Carmia. The players go to bed, each one are given their own room, and as they're sleeping during the night, of course they level up, and they each have different feelings. The doll, Pressa, she feels empty. She feels as if something is trying to get in, a force from above. Siloon, the Circle of Stars druid, feels the farthest he ever has from the stars, as if something is disconnecting him from it. Sylvia feels the farthest from home that she ever has. Even though she's traveled farther before, this place feels so far from home. And the barbarian feels confused. He's been used to being alone for so long that it feels good to have people with him. But he's not sure he wants to get tangled up in the situation. And so they sleep, Prissa being one of the first ones to get up. And then the player goes, oh shoot, says she forgot something. And Prissa flies down the ladder, runs out of the inn, and runs all the way to where the horses and the mule is kept. And at this time, I didn't realize what was happening, because I had forgotten that some days and some time had passed. 1 second, chat, I'm about to sneeze. Well, that was unsatisfying. I didn't sneeze. And if you remember earlier, I mentioned that the players had a goblin that they were keeping, that they had tied up, tied to the side saddle of the donkey. And so when she arrives, she hears the groans of the goblin strapped to the donkey, parts of his limbs starting to turn blue as they have the blood circulation has been lost in the fingers. And she feels so guilty, and she's trying to, feed the goblin and help tie him down, and the goblin's legs and arms aren't working. He just falls into the mud. And so she decides that she's going to make a makeshift bag for the goblin to carry him around on her back. And I realize that the goblin has quickly become the party mascot. I feel so bad for that goblin. Thank you, John. Thank you. And before we continue, I guess we probably can't continue, because we are so rapidly approaching the end of the stream for today, chat. It is 5:16. Pixel, we'll do this. You got it just in time. You ready? Oh, what's wrong with him? He didn't get part of the what? The thwapple tea. God, I swear every time I hear these stupid new things they're teaching these kids, a different made-up sport each time, but fine, I'll go see what he wants. Hey there, Slugger. You doing okay? Yeah, your mom told me you didn't make the Thwapple team, sorry, yeah. Oh, I mean, was this something that you were like trying for and doing? No, it's fine. No, come here. I don't want to. I'm not trying to say anything. Not saying you didn't try hard enough or anything. Look, I don't know what this Thwapple is, but I just know that you're my son. And I know that you've tried your hardest at everything you do. Just sometimes things don't go the way we want it. But I know that you can do it. Maybe not this time, maybe not the next time, but I'm here for you. And if you want to try again, see if you can get on it the next time, maybe I can help you, okay? You and I can go out and throw the Thwapple ball around, hit the Thwapple ball around. That sound good? Yeah. Well, how about this? You and I can go out and get some ice cream right now. Then you can show me how to play Thwapple. Maybe show me your favorite Thwapple team. Yeah. I'm glad we can share this time, son. There, that worked? Is that what you wanted? I don't know what the hell that was, but okay. I've done weirder things for weirder reasons. Perfect. Well, chat, we've talked about D&D for a while. We're still not at the end yet, but I think that's where we're going to have to call it for today. Because I need to go take a shower and get ready for work. Until the day I eventually, can make this my full time. So for now, let's see if we can find somebody to raid. And don't forget, we'll be back here later this evening with some games. Chad, I didn't make a schedule. Chad, I haven't made a schedule yet. Shit. Today's Monday, too. Well, chat, we're gonna look at my schedule and make one. So get ready for that. Okay. I'll have that posted later today. All right, lovelies. Let's see if we can find something to write into. Do we have anybody doing any ASMR? We're not rating into Sayora. I can't, Are they drawing? They seem interesting. Okay, let's see what else we can have. Does anybody have any ASMR artists that they would like us to raid? Except Saura. See if we have anybody doing something similar to the kind of things we do. Hey, you're welcome to the Flappable Ball Talk. Enjoy your work, Chimmets. Enjoy your work. Let's see. Do y'all like all the D&D talk, by the way? I think we'll definitely do more of this. It was a lot of fun. I don't know if Shrimp is up. Shrimp has been down for a few days. It was cozy. Good. I had a lot of fun. We might have to do this again. Maybe we'll make every Monday D&D day. What do you think, Chad? Chia da VTuber. Oh, pre-recorded. Never mind. We're not rating into that. We're not doing pre-recorded. That's a rerun. That's hair cutting. Is there no one? We need a new Shrimps, chat. We need a new Shrimps. Alright, we'll raid into Delphi. They seem cute. Every Monday D&D? Bet. We'll do every Monday D&D chat. Alright, chat, we're gonna raid into cute Delphi. Do a little EP. And there we go. Do a little EP raid chat. Copy that raid message. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with you all and talking about D&D. I'm glad I can share my hyperfixations with you. For now, y'all have a good night. And I will see you next time. Mwah. Bye. Of course, Hoshi. I'm glad I could do that. Bye for now. Mwah, 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 mwah.